Welcome home to
So
St.
this Sunday is
Anne's.
actually the Sunday that we talk about John the Baptist, but we're not going to. Sorry. Because
want you
here
to
at St.
know
Anne's is
that
the
you're
Sunday
welcome
that
to
we
join
celebrate
us
St.
at 10 a.m.
Nicholas,
on Sundays.
who
Please be
is
sure
also
to hit
really,
subscribe
really
to
cool guy.
receive our sermons. We can't wait.
And I like to talk about him a little bit, and he's just a cool guy to celebrate. And I think a very important person for us to talk about during this holiday season, when we get kind of wrapped up in all the stuffness of Christmas and all these things. So let's talk about St. Nicholas. And I would assume many of you have heard of St. Nicholas, probably. Somewhere along the line you've heard of St. Nick. So I'll do a brief history lesson of him. I'm sorry, I can't talk. It's fine. I'll blame the baby. I don't know why I'm going to blame the baby, but I'm going to. I mean, why have them if you can't blame them for things, right? Okay, so St. Nicholas of Myra, which is, Myra is kind of modern-day Turkey, that area. He was a bishop around the 300s. I think died in maybe 360, roughly that era. So just before the Middle Ages. But the church is growing, so early church. So he's at that time period. Pretty young bishop. He starts very, very young. He's very he's probably like the patron saint of all the things. Everybody wants Saint Nicholas as their patron saint. Like, I'm not even kidding you. He's the patron saint of like marriageable women. He's the patron saint of sailors. He's the patron saint of children. Like, it's ridiculous. If you got a second right now, just Google right now what St. Nicholas is the patron saint of. It's insane. Like, literally everybody's like, he's ours. No, he's ours. Literally, patron saint of everything. And that's because he's a really, really cool guy. He really, truly is. Like I said, fantastic bishop. He's a bishop. And he's known for his generosity. He just does these incredible acts of generosity. And I'll go through the story that most people know. But then there are all these other stories, too, of things that he did, which are just incredible. I mean, he was the bishop at the time, and they'd been hit by a famine, like 3 years running. This community had been hit by famine. The crops had failed. They don't have grain, all this stuff. And this is a port area. It's one of the reasons he's a patron saint of sailors. Port area. I don't know how much you know about that area, but there's a lot of water. Lots of sailing going on. And so some sailors come in and they port, and they're carrying grain. He's like, hey, I know you're carrying some grain. May we have some? And they're like, no, this has been all measured and meted out. Like, we can't let any go. And he's like, okay, here's the deal. I promise you, if you let me take some of this grain, when you hit your destination, your port, all of the grain will be accounted for. You will not have lost any grain. And they're like, and don't you kind of think there was probably more discussion this? But they're like, okay, sure, yeah, that's fine. And I feel like maybe it didn't go that easily, but either way. So he takes enough grain for the community. And when they do get to port, all the grain is accounted for. But he has enough grain for his community. And in fact, has enough for 2 years to feed them in famine and enough to seed the plants. But there are all these other cool stories. Probably the one that is most common, stop me if you've heard it. Sandra, like, just go ahead and don't even say it. Okay, so there are 3 daughters. This man has 3 daughters. He's very, very poor. I don't know about what you know about this time period in history, but an unmarriageable woman, things don't go well for her. You're familiar with the world's oldest career That's what's going to happen. And, yeah, yes. She's probably, yes, absolutely. Convent of sorts. Yeah. So he has 3 daughters, and he cannot provide a dowry for them. And you have to provide a dowry because who wants a woman if you don't get paid to take her? I mean, come on. Have you met us? I love it when a feminist has to preach history. It's fantastic. So, but he's a very, very proud man because he's not the one who has to have this career move. It's a lot easier to be proud when it's not your career on the line, isn't it? Anyway, he's very proud and he doesn't want to take any assistance. But Nicholas is like not having any of this going on in his community. He's like, no, this is not happening to these girls. And so he has a beautiful white horse. Because if you're a bishop, you should. If I were a bishop, I would have a beautiful white horse. That's what he has. So in full vestments, in the middle of the night, because that's when one does go out riding in their full vestments, I highly recommend it. Otherwise, it's just weird if you do it another time. So he goes by this man's house. Now, conveniently, the girls, all 3 nights, have been washing their stockings because nobody wants dirty socks. Gross, ew. Now, depending on how you hear the story, sometimes they've hung them by the open window. Sometimes, because they want them to be warm in the morning, they've hung them by the chimney with care. Yes. Because nobody wants wet stockings in the morning, and it's even better. Have you ever taken your socks out of the dryer? Fresh from the dryer, jeans and socks, the best. This would be the 300s version of that. Conveniently, they've left the window open, or the chimney, I don't know, whichever. And Nicholas, depending on your story, he either has a gold ball that looks a lot like an orange, or some gold coins, depending. I don't know. It just depends on your story. And because he doesn't play for the Royals, he's actually good. Sorry, was that bad? This year. I know. They were okay this year. It was okay. It wasn't 2015, but whatever. So he's riding by, and he's got a good arm. This bishop does. He's riding along, and he chucks the gold out as he's walking by, and would you believe it hits every single stocking? Bam, bam, bam. I know. Girl, I'm with you, I believe. I mean, we won't get technical about what I believe, but if you're ever looking for something to do, I highly recommend hagiography, which is a study of saints, the history and the stories. It's funny. Anyway, miraculously, all these girls suddenly have the money for a dowry, and he has saved the day. Good job, St. Nick. I'm sure none of those pieces of those stories in any way seem similar to you in anything. But then there are all sorts of stories of there were people who were falsely accused, and he gets them out of prison. He saves some seminarians / students. It depends on the story. Like if you want to save seminarians from being eaten, if you want to save like young students from being eaten, to be honest, it probably sells. But if you've ever met seminarians, it sells better to say we're saving small children. Okay. So we've heard lots and lots of stories about him. In fact, like I said at the beginning of the sermon, I'm sure many of you have heard of St. Nicholas, correct? Raise your little paw if you have not heard of St. Nicholas. All right. Here's a fun story, though. Tell me if you have heard it. In 325, the Emperor Constantine gets really, really sick of all the infighting that these Christians are doing. Like, sick of it. He says, I'm done. You all get together and you figure it out. So we have what's called the Council of Nicaea in 325. You know, what we're going to do after the sermon, that thing that we're going to read, that's what they come up with. So all these religious people get together and they fight it out. Nicholas is one of them because he's a bishop. Like I said, he's also brilliant. He's a scholar. There's another guy there. His name is Arius. Arius is now what we call a beloved heretic because basically if you don't win, you're a heretic. If you win, you're orthodox. That's how this works. But St. Nicholas feels very, very strongly about this. And Arius also feels very, very strongly about what they're arguing about. And finally, St. Nicholas gets he's not a saint at the point, he's just Nicholas. He gets so angry, he gets up and he slaps the guy across the face. I know, slapping heretics, it's a thing that saints do. Anyone heard that story before? No. Why do I tell it? Because you and I, and in the church, because A, it's funny, and who doesn't want to, slap somebody every once in a while? You and I, and the church in general, get really, really worried about being right. We want to believe the right things. We want to say the right things. We want to be right. We're going to fight it out, right? Anyone ever run into any Christian churches or denominations that are busy fighting it out because we're like, we're right, and you're wrong, and you're probably going to hell for it? Who knows St. Nicholas fought at the Council of Nicaea? Nobody. You want to know why? Because it doesn't matter. Right belief and right teaching and right arguing don't matter unless on the ground you're changing lives. Why do we know St. Nicholas? He's not the patron saint of heretics or slapping priests. So, I mean, wouldn't that be cool if there were a patron saint of that? Don't you kind of want one? He matters because of what he did, because of the lives he changed, because of the people he touched. It doesn't matter what you and I say we believe. It doesn't matter what we argue. It doesn't matter any of that. It doesn't matter if we're right or they're wrong and we convince them that we're wrong and that we convince them that we're right. It doesn't even, please don't run around slapping people. I strongly discourage it. I understand the inclination. I really do. But don't. Don't act on the inclination. What matters is what you and I do. What matters as a Christian is the lives that we touch, the people that we love, the way the world changes because you and I are in it. That is what matters. And it's so easy to get sucked into rightness, isn't it? It's so easy to argue and convince ourselves that they're wrong, that they're idiots. But does that proclaim the gospel? No. You know what proclaims the gospel? Looking at our community and saying, there are 3 girls suffering. And I refuse, as a Christian, to let those women suffer. And I will act, and I will change it. That is what matters. What matters is when we look in our community and we see that people are starving and they're suffering and they don't have enough to live, we say, this is unacceptable. What do I need to do? Who do I need to talk to? How do I change the very system that has created people starving and famine? That's what being a Christian is. We can have all the councils of Nicaea that we want. In fact, some history buffs in here will know about the Council of Nicaea, but the vast majority of people do not care. How many of you are like, well, I'm a Christian because I say the Nicene Creed every Sunday, and I believe every single thing in the Nicene Creed. And that's what makes me a Christian. Anybody? No, that is not what makes you a Christian. What makes you a Christian is saying, I love God so much that I love you. Even though sometimes I really want to slap you. And I'm really, really tempted, but I love you, and I will change the world that you are living in to make sure that you know the love of Christ. That's the power of St. Nicholas. And that's why I think it's so important every year that we talk about him. Don't get me wrong, John the Baptist has some really good fun stories. And we'll talk about John the Baptist sometime because, again, good fun stories. And I'm always here for good fun stories. You know that. But I really, really, truly believe that every Advent, you and I have to remember the spirit of Christianity that creates Christmas. Because it is about generosity. And it is about, guys, I'm going to get kind of annoyed about parenting real fast. I know. You guys haven't heard this before. I have a student, and God bless him. He doesn't make the best decisions in the world. Like, a lot. What? No, I just described every single middle schooler ever. Anyway, his parents or his mother is extremely frustrated. She said, I'm going to take Christmas away. And I was like, oh. What have we done in our culture that we so misunderstand Christmas that we think we can take it away? It doesn't matter if there's an elf watching you. It doesn't matter if you've done something that you shouldn't have done. God shows up. Christmas shows up. That is the message of St. Nicholas, is that no matter what, generosity is not something that you and I earn or deserve, but that God shows up anyway. It is not our job to decide if Christmas is earned. It isn't. The very essence of Advent, the very essence of St. Nicholas, the very essence of all of this is we don't deserve this. But God does it anyway. We have done nothing to earn this. In fact, to be perfectly honest, we've done a lot of things to probably get it taken away. But we can't. Because there's so much love, and in that so much love, there's so much generosity. And so I ask you, when we are on the receiving end of that kind of love and generosity from our Creator, how do we live in any other way? Also, don't take Christmas away. Just don't. Oh, and who's ready to say the Nicene Creed? Woo! Council Nicaea 325. Yeah.
We want you to know that you're welcome to
okay,
join
here's
us
what we're going to
10
talk
a.m.
about,
on
belief
Sundays.
and right belief.
Please be sure to hit subscribe to receive our sermons.
I feel like this
we
is
can't
a really
wait to meet
great
you.
question. Do you have to believe everything in the Nicene Creed to be a Christian? Okay,